this might be the scariest story you've ever heard. Imagine inheriting a beautiful, centuries-old dollhouse, only to discover it's not just a toy, it's a nightmare waiting to unfold. From eerie whispers to shadows that move on their own, what happened inside this house will leave you questioning everything. This is the true story of the Dollhouse of Shadows, and trust me, you won't sleep after hearing this. An heirloom arrives. Claire inherited the dollhouse on her 34th birthday, an unexpected but thoughtful gift from her grandmother. She remembered it vividly from her childhood visits, a towering, intricately detailed replica of a Victorian mansion. Its tiny brass doorknobs gleamed. Its wallpaper was adorned with floral patterns, and its miniature furniture seemed alive with craftsmanship. "It's a family heirloom," her grandmother had explained with pride. "Take good care of it, and whatever you do, never throw it away." At the time, Claire had laughed, dismissing the comment as her grandmother's eccentricity. Now, with her daughter Sophie eagerly pulling her toward the dollhouse, those words felt oddly foreboding. Sophie's fascination. Sophie was enchanted by the dollhouse. She spent hours examining every room, naming the porcelain dolls and creating stories about the tiny family. "Mommy, this is Mr. and Mrs. Thompson," she said one evening, holding up two elegantly dressed dolls. "And these are their children." Claire smiled. Sophie's creative streak was one of her favorite things about her daughter. But then, Sophie started talking about the dolls as if they were alive. "They don't like it when I move their furniture," Sophie told Claire one night. Claire chuckled. "They're just dolls, honey. They don't have feelings." But Sophie's face remained serious. "They told me to stop," she whispered. Unseen hands. At first, Claire thought Sophie's words were just her imagination. But then she started noticing strange things. Furniture inside the dollhouse seemed to move on its own. One day, she found the dining table overturned and the chairs scattered. Sophie insisted she hadn't touched it. The porcelain dolls began appearing in different positions. Sometimes they were facing the windows, other times gathered in a circle. Once, Claire found them lined up by the front door of the dollhouse as if preparing to leave. Late one night, Claire thought she heard faint whispers coming from Sophie's room. She stood frozen outside the door, her hand on the knob, straining to hear. The whispers stopped the moment she entered. "Sophie," she called softly. Her daughter was sound asleep, the dollhouse sitting innocently on the table. Scratches and shadows. Then came the scratches. Sophie would wake up with thin, jagged marks on her arms and legs. At first, Claire thought they might be from the cat, but the patterns were too precise, almost deliberate. "They're mad at me again," Sophie whispered one morning, her eyes wide with fear. Claire's stomach nodded. "Who's mad at you?" "The Thompsons," Sophie said. "They don't like when I go into their rooms." Claire decided to move the dollhouse to the attic. She told Sophie it was to keep it safe, but in truth, she wanted it as far away as possible. That night, Sophie woke up screaming. "It came out of the dollhouse," she cried. "What did?" Claire asked, her heart pounding. "A shadow," Sophie sobbed. "It was standing in the corner watching me." The origin of evil. Desperate for answers, Claire called her mother. "That dollhouse," her mother began, her voice hesitant. "It's been in our family for generations. Your great-grandmother said it was a gift from a strange woman, a local recluse rumored to practice witchcraft. She claimed it brought bad luck to anyone who owned it." Claire pressed for details, and her mother relayed chilling stories. Unexplained deaths, sudden illnesses, and strange accidents that had plagued the family. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" Claire demanded. "I thought it was just a legend," her mother admitted. But now I'm not so sure. An attempt to destroy. Determined to end the nightmare, Claire decided to destroy the dollhouse. She dragged it to the backyard, doused it in lighter fluid, and set it on fire. As the flames engulfed the wood, an ear-piercing wail echoed through the air. Claire and Sophie covered their ears, their eyes wide with terror. When the fire finally died, the dollhouse was reduced to ashes. Claire felt a wave of relief. But that night, Sophie woke up screaming again, "Mommy, it's back!" Claire rushed to Sophie's room and froze. There, on the table, sat the dollhouse, completely intact. Its tiny lights glowed faintly, and the air around it felt icy. A nightmare that spreads. Claire packed up her family and moved out within days, leaving the dollhouse behind. Months later, she heard from the new owners. Their young daughter had found the dollhouse in the attic and placed it in her room. The family began experiencing the same strange occurrences: moving furniture, scratches, and whispers in the night. The dollhouse of shadows lives on. To this day, the dollhouse remains in the house, its curse spreading to anyone who dares interact with it. Some say it's haunted. Others believe it's a gateway to something darker. Would you dare to step inside its tiny world, the dollhouse of shadows? Part 2. If you thought the nightmare ended with Claire leaving the dollhouse behind, think again. What happens when something so sinister refuses to be abandoned? The curse of the dollhouse didn't just stay with the family. It grew stronger, hungrier, and more dangerous. What you're about to hear is a continuation of the terror, and this time, no one will escape unscathed. A new family, a new victim. The Martin family had just moved into their new home, thrilled to start a fresh chapter. Hannah, their 10-year-old daughter, was the first to discover the dollhouse. She found it in the attic, tucked under a dusty tarp, as if it had been waiting for her. "Look, Mom," Hannah called out, dragging the heavy dollhouse into her room. "It's amazing." Her parents, overjoyed by her excitement, didn't think twice about letting her keep it. Hannah spent hours playing with the dollhouse, captivated by its intricate design. She named the dolls, rearranged the furniture, and even started talking to them. At first, her parents thought it was adorable. But soon, her behavior changed. Hannah grew withdrawn, spending more time in her room with the dollhouse. She refused to let anyone touch it and became agitated if they even mentioned moving it. "They don't want to leave," she whispered one evening when her mother suggested putting the dollhouse in the living room. "Who doesn't want to leave?" her mother asked, confused. "The family," Hannah replied, her voice flat. A familiar darkness. Strange things began happening almost immediately. The temperature in Hannah's room dropped inexplicably, no matter how high the heater was turned up. Her parents heard faint whispers at night, and their daughter began waking up with mysterious bruises and scratches. One night, Mr. Martin walked past Hannah's room and saw her sitting in the dark, staring at the dollhouse. "Hannah, why are you sitting in the dark?" he asked, flipping on the light. Hannah turned to him, her face pale. "They said they don't like the light." The shadow returns. The family's dog, Max, began avoiding Hannah's room entirely. He would growl at the doorway, his fur standing on end, and bark at something only he could see. One night, Mrs. Martin woke up to the sound of Max whimpering. She found him cowering under the bed in the guest room. When she tried to coax him out, she heard a thud coming from Hannah's room. She rushed in to find her daughter standing in the middle of the room, staring at the dollhouse. "They're coming," Hannah whispered. Before Mrs. Martin could respond, a shadow flickered across the wall. It wasn't her shadow, nor Hannah's. It was something else entirely. The history unfolds. Terrified, the Martins began researching the history of their home. They found Claire's contact information and called her, desperate for answers. Claire reluctantly recounted her experiences with the dollhouse and its horrifying effects. "You need to destroy it," she urged. "But it won't be easy. We tried, and it came back." Determined to end the nightmare, Mr. Martin enlisted the help of a priest to bless the house. The priest agreed, but seemed uneasy the moment he stepped into Hannah's room. "This isn't just a haunting," the priest said, after examining the dollhouse. "This is something far darker. It's not attached to the house. It's attached to the dollhouse itself." The ritual. The priest performed a cleansing ritual, sprinkling holy water on the dollhouse and chanting prayers. The room grew colder, and the dollhouse began to shake violently. Suddenly, a piercing scream filled the air, deafening and otherworldly. The priest continued, his voice unwavering, but the room erupted into chaos. Furniture toppled over, the lights flickered, and the shadow emerged. Tall and menacing, its form shifting as if it were made of smoke. "Leave this family," the priest commanded, his voice firm. The shadow paused, its dark form looming over the dollhouse before retreating into it. The dollhouse fell silent, the illusion of safety. Believing the ordeal was over, the Martins decided to burn the dollhouse. They took it to an open field, doused it with gasoline, and set it ablaze. The flames roared high, and for a moment they felt a sense of relief. But as the dollhouse burned, Hannah began to cry uncontrollably. "What's wrong?" her mother asked, holding her tightly. "They're still here," Hannah sobbed. "They never left." The family looked back at the fire and saw the shadow standing in the flames, its eyes glowing red. The curse spreads. The Martins sold the house and moved far away, but the curse didn't stay behind. 1 month after they left, the new homeowners reported seeing a strange, antique dollhouse in the attic. This time, the curse didn't wait for someone to discover it. The shadows began moving freely, spreading throughout the house and claiming new victims. The dollhouse of shadows wasn't just an object, it was a gateway, and its reach was growing stronger. Would you dare to confront it, or would you run?